Alright, welcome to our next lesson. Today we are going to make a face mask. You are going to need 2 pieces of cotton fabric that is 7 by 9 inches, and this will make an adult-sized face mask. I will put the dimensions of a child size in the description so you know what to use there. But this is making an adult size because this is the kind that my husband likes to wear, so I'm making one for him today. And then you will need 2 pieces of elastic, or I like to use, this is a cotton lycra stretchy fabric. It has a 2-way stretch to it. And this is 13 inches long. Okay, so now we're going to take our mask and we're going to first put in the ties or the elastic, and I like to lay them in there like this, and you position them so they are about 1 inch from each end like this. All right, then we take the other piece and we lay it on top. Then I take and I kind of put my thumb there and I pinch so that I have both of those pieces together where the elastic is, and I go ahead and make sure my corners are lined up, and I'm going to put a pin right in over the top of all of those layers, all the 3 layers, the elastic, and then the 2 layers of the mask. And I'm going to do the same on each corner. And the elastic pieces don't have to be exactly 1 inch down from the end, just approximately. You just don't want to be sewing on them. So we're going to pin, and this is very similar to the rice bag, the warm bag that we did. I'm going to pin all sides, and I'm going to leave an opening right here at the top. And before, like I showed before, I like to double pin right there. Okay, now we're just going to sew all around, sewing over the tops of each of the elastic pieces. All right, now we are going to sew all the way around. We're going to make sure our threads are to the back of our machine. We're going to put our presser foot down right next to those 2 pins that I started with. We're going to twist the hand wheel to put the needle down in the machine. We are going to sew forward just a couple of stitches, just a few. Okay, and then we're going to sew in reverse. I'm going to stop, push my reverse or back stitch, sew back a couple stitches, and then we're going to go ahead and sew forward. Okay, and then on the corners, I like to do a back stitch as well, and then pivot or turn. We're going to do a back stitch on this side. And we're going to sew down to the end, making sure we back stitch. Now my machine and me, I like to back stitch just continually as I sew. But some machines aren't that kind, and so if you need to stop and then push the back stitch button, you certainly can. So you want to make sure you're supporting your fabric by putting your hand up on there. Okay, I'm going to do a back stitch. Okay, support your fabric. Back stitch at that corner, sew all the way down, back stitch, turn, just like we did on the warm square. So I have gone all the way around, back stitching at each of the corners to make a stronger corner, and then also back stitching at my beginning and ends. So I pull it out, I clip my curves, and I've used matching thread, so it's really hard to see, but you can see that I have stitched all the way around. Now we're going to remove the pins and turn it. All right, we're ready to turn, and I need to clip each one of these corners straight across so we don't have the excess bulk in the corners of our face mask when we get ready to turn it. So I trim each of those off. Okay, and then I am also going to trim very close to that seam allowance as well. I'm going to cut just because when we get ready to top stitch, we don't want a lot of extra bulk on those sides, and you'll see why in a minute. So we're going to trim those down. So we're about 1/4 of an inch away from our seam, just on the sides. All right, now I'm going to turn it right side out. look, here are my elastic pieces. How cool is that? Okay, we want to get our corners out. Do you remember how to get the corners out? I'm going to show you. First I push them all out with my fingers. I take a pin, I stick it down in, lifting out each of the corners so that we get a nice crisp corner. After you have turned and pulled out all your corners, you're going to press it so it's nice and flat, making sure the spot where your opening is also pressed down flat. All right, I've ironed it so it's all nice and flat. My around the head pieces, now I do around the head, not ear pieces. That way the mask can get taken off and not get lost. It can just hang around your neck like a necklace. So that's how we like to wear them at our house. That's the most comfortable for us. You could do ear ones. They would go this way. It's a little trickier on this kind of mask. So I suggest doing the around the head ones. It's more comfortable. I've also used black because then when you touch it with your hands, it doesn't get as dirty as easy. So it doesn't show up. So now we are going to make our pleats in the sides. So I'm gonna turn like this so you can see. And I'm gonna make 3 pleats. And guess what? There's nothing precise about this. Okay, pleat. Nice, about a 1/2 inch pleat, maybe 1/4 inch, and then another one right there, and another pleat right there at the end. 3 beautiful pleats going across. We want to do the same thing on this side, making sure that you pleat going in the same direction. A small pleat like that, pin it up, and we're going to do another pleat like that, and our last pleat. So now you've got pleats folded down both sides, still with our elastic or whichever kind of you plan to use. Now we are going to sew down each of these sides. All right, let's sew down. So again, we are just going to sew right along this edge, as close to that edge as we can get. So we're going to sew right down to sew those pleats in place. And I like to sew down the pleats and not this way because you catch the pleats. So we're going to sew down the pleats. Again, spinning so that your needle starts down in and that you hold your threads. I'm making sure that I back stitch. I'm going to sew forward a little bit, back stitch a little bit, sew across those pleats all the way down to the end, back stitching as I get to the end, pulling out, trimming my threads. Okay, now we're going to sew down the other side. This side you have to sew down against the pleats. There's no other way around it. Sewing down, just making sure you push with your fingers, getting those pleats to go under. Again, I sew right over the tops of my pins. You may want to remove your pins as you go, but if you sew nice and slow, most machines will sew right over the top. Look how nice that looks. Remove our pins. Now the last step that we need to do is we need to close up this hole right here. So we are just going to top stitch along the bottom of the mask. And to make it more uniform, I'm also going to top stitch along the top because it doesn't really matter, and then that gives us a seam across the top and the bottom that just looks a little better. It finishes it off, even though it's only for decorative purposes and it is not needed at all. There you go. Now you can pop it open and wear this beautiful blue face mask.